Skywatch Media News for December the 19th, 2019. There is something quite eventful happening with our sun that hasn't garnered a lot of media attention lately, mostly because what's happening isn't exactly considered to be good news for planet Earth. Our sun appears to be on the verge of a very deep solar minimum, which is expected to reach an historic milestone. As of mid-December 2019, the sun has been blank with no visible sunspots for 272 days. This would be the quietest year in respect to sunspots since the year 1913, which accounted for 311 spotless days. Most notable is that the current stretch of consecutive spotless days has reached 34 as of December the 17th, which accounts for the sun being blank for nearly 75% of the year 2019. The previous record for spotless days in the era of satellite data was in the year 2008, when the sun was blank for 268 days. So 2019 now sets a new space-age record for spotless days in a calendar year. Although solar minimum is known to be a normal path of the 11-year solar period, these latest statistics are troubling because the last one and the current one are far deeper than most others have been in the historical records. In almost every occurrence of a solar minimum, the Earth sees a reduction in solar storms, while also seeing an intensification of cosmic rays. Solar cycle 24, which recently ended, turned out to be one of the weakest in the past 100 years, a weakening trend that began back in the 1980s. It's highly anticipated that the next solar cycle will become the weakest in 200 years. In terms of what this means for the Earth, and specifically for each of us, can be very disconcerting. It creates an unsettling feeling. One of the biggest concerns is the weakening of the sun's magnetic field, which allows galactic cosmic rays to penetrate the solar system. These cosmic rays are high-energy foreign particles that originate from outside of the solar system, which have the potential to impact the Earth's atmosphere. There is no way to fend off these harmful particles if our sun's magnetic field has weakened, causing the protective solar winds to be diminished. Over the past 4 years, these cosmic rays have been intensifying. On December the 5th and 6th of this year, they surged to within 1 percentage point of the space-age record, according to data collected by the Cosmic Ray Station located in Finland. High-altitude balloons that were launched to register stratospheric radiation over central California have shown a steady increase of cosmic rays of about 13% since the year 2015. The correlation between the two sets of data is phenomenal, considering the immense geographical separations and how they differ in their monitoring techniques. If you happen to be a frequent flyer or someone who flies for a living, this is something that you should pay attention to. A recent study by Harvard researchers has shown that flight attendants and pilots face an elevated risk of cancer when compared to the general population, in large part due to the risk factors associated with cosmic rays. In addition, the study has determined that cosmic rays promote the formation of clouds, which could adversely affect both the weather and the climate. Researchers have been tracking solar cycles since their discovery back in the 19th century. The latest forecast for solar cycle 25 indicates the weakest cycle in the past 200 years, where the sunspot numbers could be 30 to 50% lower than the most recent one, solar cycle 24. The next solar cycle is expected to begin in the year 2020 and reach its climax around the year 2025. The forecast being determined by observing the solar magnetic field and the sun's interior activity, rather than the use of sunspot numbers as a sole determination. Forecasting the sun's activity over an extended period of time is a unique challenge because scientists have yet to completely understand the inner workings of the sun. The factors that play out within the sun's interior cannot be directly measured. They can only be estimated using related phenomena from its surface. This would entail the observation of sunspots, coronal holes, and filaments. Here is an interesting tidbit, and one that may explain some of the wild weather and climate-related events that are happening on Earth in the year 2019. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that in the year 1913, there were 311 days without sunspots. In that same year, there were many extreme weather-related events, including the hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth in Death Valley, California. Whether this has any correlation to the climatic events of today is one that can be argued, but this is certainly a point of interest worth considering as we enter into a period of solar slumber. So what exactly are the implications of a deep solar shutdown? Some of the more obvious ones would include extreme cold, crop loss, and famine. Volcanic eruptions, which are on the rise globally, must also be included. But if you have noticed, the mainstream media, as well as NASA, isn't talking much about any of these significant events. In fact, the events of today are remarkably similar to the events that transpired back in the late 18th century and early 19th century, during a period of lower than average global temperatures, which was called the Dalton minimum. The year without a summer occurred during this period, the result of unusually low temperatures, along with the effects of the second largest volcanic eruption that took place in the past 2,000 years, the Mount Tambora event of April 1815. Surprisingly, the Tambora eruption wasn't of much interest to the United States or Europe, because the news of that time was focused on the Napoleonic Wars and the fight for European supremacy. That was until the winter of 1815, when the weather became extreme. By the following year, 1816, the climate was dominating the news headlines, when both spring and summer failed to arrive. In Virginia, it was snowing in both June and July. In Pennsylvania, there was ice on ponds in August. In a matter of hours, the temperature would drop from the 90s to nearly freezing. Very few crops were harvested in the United States that year, and the livestock suffered. Consequently, food and grain prices skyrocketed. The news was the same across Europe and parts of Asia. The potato crop in Ireland rotted, resulting in widespread starvation. In England, France, and Germany, the crops failed, leading to food riots. In China, thousands of people starved, while in southern Asia, torrential rains triggered a deadly cholera epidemic. This is how devastating it was for the residents of the Northern Hemisphere back in the year of 1816. And in several respects, this is reminiscent of what we see happening on Earth today. With all of the talk about the sun's behavior, the lack of sunspots, and the influx of galactic cosmic rays, there is still a lack of real concern on what the future will bring as a result of a solar slowdown. There are some researchers that insist there won't be a grand solar minimum within the next decade, and that solar cycle 25 will be short and uneventful. But like every other natural event that has happened over the years, it's not a matter of if it will happen, but when. And this is what should always be foremost on our minds in the years that follow. As you look up to the greatness of the heavens, be aware that it is the wonders of nature and its creator that has made each of us what we are. Each of us are unique, that out of our own creative capabilities, we make ourselves what we want to be. Let the sky and its creator be your limit, and eternity your measurement. Follow always that great law. Thanks for watching.